Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our exciting Duolingo English Test webinar today. I'm joined by Jeff and Sam from the Duolingo English Test.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And I think it's going to be a really great presentation today. We have some really interesting information for you guys about what to expect during the Duolingo English Test, how to prepare for it, this being just such a fantastic and new piece of the study abroad puzzle, being able to use the Duolingo English Test to gain admission to institutions has been a real great advancement for students throughout COVID. So without further ado, just a couple of reminders. So there will be a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please submit your questions through the question function on your screen. We will be sending the recording to all registrants, so don't worry, you will be getting a recording, and you can feel free to contact your ApplyBoard representative if you do have any questions about scores or requirements for specific institutions. So we won't be covering that today, but you can reach out to your representative for that. So before we get started, I just wanted to let everybody know who's on the call, who is an ApplyBoard recruitment partner. We do have some exciting product updates for you. So the Duolingo English Test, you can now search on applyboard.com based on a test score. So that's a great new feature that we're offering on the platform. So you can also see eligibility based on score, and you can search for programs based on a Duolingo English Test score filter. So that's really, really exciting. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. So I'm going to be passing it over to Jeff and Sam, and we're going to get started with the presentation today.
Thank you, Katie. And I'll share my screen in a moment. And we'll go from there. Okay. So yeah, this is going to cover the Duolingo English Test from end to end. There's a lot to get through, but again, we're going to save some time for questions. My name is Jeff. I work on marketing for the Duolingo English Test. I've been on the team for about 3.5 years. I'm based in Pittsburgh, where Duolingo is headquartered. I'm delighted to be joined by my co-presenter, Sam Fleischman, who works in international engagement. Sam, do you want to say hello?
Absolutely. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name's Sam Fleischman. I was a school counselor for a little over 13 years in Singapore and Hong Kong before joining the Duolingo English Test about 18 months ago. I joined and moved to Pittsburgh just to be with Jeff and the Duolingo English Test team. We will talk a little bit about why Duolingo is based in Pittsburgh.
Cool. So this webinar is going to cover, again, the test from front to back, an overview of the test and the company, how to prepare for the test, what the test process is, including the test experience itself, the test results, what they look like, and how you share them. And then we'll tackle a bunch of the frequently asked questions. And again, saving time for Q&A. So I'll hand it to you, Sam, to cover the first few sections, and then I'll come back for the test process.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jeff. So the overview and the background of Duolingo is important to understand how the Duolingo English Test has grown and operated. The Duolingo background is really tied to the mission of Duolingo, and the Duolingo English Test lives out that mission as well. That is why we've given over 3,500 free tests to different high-achieving low-income students in the last year. And it ties back to Duolingo, which is a free education learning app for all. You can learn any of our 38 languages or all of our 38 languages for free, but we're gonna leave that there and just talk about, because of Duolingo's breadth of like 300 million users, and Jeff, we got your WhatsApp there or something, awesome. Because of Duolingo's breadth, we have so many people that we can learn how to best teach languages. And that is because Luis van Aan has this drive to bring education to the world. He was born and raised in Guatemala. He attended university in the United States, and he had to actually take a TOEFL. He went to Carnegie Mellon University and also lived in Pittsburgh and loved Pittsburgh and decided to create Duolingo and locate it right here in Pittsburgh. He invented CAPTCHA and reCAPTCHA, which is the infusion of artificial intelligence and humanity to make sure that we keep fraud out of systems, like when you're going to buy a ticket to a sporting event in 2022, you'll be able to do that again, I think. But anyway, because of his drive for education, his experience of the TOEFL, where he had to fly from Guatemala to El Salvador 20 years ago, prompted him to look at what testing looks like today. And there are still students, your students, that are traveling across the country or across the world to take an English language proficiency test for university. And because of artificial intelligence and humanity and technology, we could do better. And so the Duolingo English Test is really driven from that approach of being able to do better and become more accessible to students. So how does the Duolingo English Test to do that? It's designed for you. It's a digital first test. It's convenient and fast and affordable. And it's also accepted by over 2,000 institutions, 1,400 undergrad programs around the world. You can take it anywhere, anytime. As long as you have a stable internet connection, you're in a room by yourself, and the computer that you have has a microphone and a webcam, you are able to take this test within an hour and get your results within 2 days. Once you have your results, you are able to share with anyone that is accepting the test around the world. And you get to share those results for free. The test is affordable. It's about $49 US. It's not just about, it actually is $49 US, and there's no additional costs. So in that regard, it's very affordable. It's fast and convenient. It's designed for you. In comparison to the other tests that are out there that a lot of people are taking, we're about a quarter of the cost, but those tests also fluctuate depending on where you are. So the Duolingo English Test can be a fifth of the cost of the other tests as well. You don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to take the test in the morning. You don't have to take the test over 2 days. The Duolingo English Test, you take the test when you want to take the test, and it takes about an hour. When you have your results, you can send your results to any of these fine institutions around the world. And what they get, the university gets the score that you have on your English test, which equates to what they're looking for in admissions. But they also get to see a video interview and a written sample of you. Because at the end of our test, we give you 2 prompts that you get to choose from, and then you get to speak for 3 minutes. This is an opportunity for the university to hear you speak, but also to get to know who you are a little bit more. You also have that chance to write for 5 minutes and to display what you can do in a spontaneous setting to be able to convey your ideas and your thoughts. When you want to search for institutions, I think it's snazzy and sweet that ApplyBoard has that new function on the app, and so you should definitely use that. But if you come to englishtest.duolingo.com, you can search by institution, you can search by name, you can search by location here as well. So just an overview of the test again. The test, 1 hour, it covers speaking, writing, reading, and listening. And it has that video component, and it has that written sample. You take the test in an hour. It comes to us for a proctoring process of certification. Within 2 days, after human and artificial intelligence proctoring, you'll receive an email saying, yes, your test is certified, or maybe it wasn't for a variety of reasons. At that moment, once you have your results, share it anywhere you'd like. As you think about, hey, I want to do this, I want to take this test, you should think about preparing for the test. Now, I mentioned some of the attributes that your computer needs to have, but the next slide really goes into the details of what is required of your computer and of your person. You must have a government ID, a driver's license, a passport. We have a whole list on our website of what country you're coming from, what IDs are accepted. You must be in a quiet and well-lit room. The reason that you must be in both of these settings, a quiet and well-lit room with an ID, is very similar to when you would walk into a test center in Asia. I actually proctored PSAT, ACT, SAT testing when I was a school counselor. I'd wake up really early in the morning, I'd have a cup of coffee, and a student who I've never seen in my life would come to me with an ID from a country I'd never seen in my life and hand it to me. And I'd have to look at it very quickly, hand it back to them, and let them go to a seat. Now, I was the only proctor with less than 20 students, so actually once they were at their seat, I had no view of them. And I didn't get to see their ID any longer. It was just a real quick process. We do the same thing, except for we have your ID and we were able to analyze it through our artificial intelligence and proctoring. And then you go to a quiet, well-lit room, you're already there in front of your computer. You must have 60 minutes of free time because the test can take up to about an hour. And your internet connection needs to be reliable. You must have a computer. The computer must have some requirements and elements as well. Your computer must have a supported browser. And the browsers that are most popular that are supported are Chrome, Opera, and 360. There are other popular browsers out there, but we do not support those. So make sure you're using the correct browser. You must have a front-facing camera because we need to see you and you need to see the test. You need a microphone and speakers. You cannot use headphones. As you understand the rules, you will be asked at the onboarding of the test, are you wearing headphones? This is very important because sometimes students don't even remember they're wearing headphones and they click they're not wearing headphones, but they are wearing headphones and their test doesn't work. It's invalidated when it comes to us. You have to look at the screen the whole time. You also can't have plugins or you can't access other programs. So if you're on a browser and you have a plugin or an extension that helps you in normal day-to-day internet life, you do need to disable that extension. Nobody else can be in the test environment. That will cause a cancellation of your test or an invalid score. And no outside devices or materials. This includes a mobile phone, but it also includes no paper and pen. So it's really important to understand that so that you don't break any of those rules. The last bit of preparing for the test is to actually understand what a high stakes test, which is computer adaptive, can look like. And so we encourage you to take our free practice test. It's about 15 minutes. It is computer adaptive. So the reason our test can go fast is because we're going up and down and trying to figure out where you are on the English language level. And we're not asking you questions outside of your level. The practice test does that a little bit, but it's 15 minutes and it gives you a range, an estimate. From that range, you can look on the ApplyBoard app to find out where your score might lead you, and then you can go ahead and buy the test and take the test. I'm going to pass it over to Jeff to go a little bit more into what the test looks like so that when you take that free practice test, you'll be able to be encouraged to take the real test and see how you do.
Thank you so much, Sam. One other distinction I'll point out about the practice test is that you don't have to follow the rules on the practice test, and so that's why Sam encouraged you to make sure you understand the rules and that you have the technical requirements, because those are not on the same level with the certified test. So I'll talk about the test process from creating an account, purchasing a test, to the actual test experience. So the first thing you need to do is create an account. So you go to our website, englishtest.duolingo.com. You can click that big orange button that says take a test. It's free to create an account. So all you need is your name and email essentially, and then you can create an account. And once you log into the account, this is what you'll see. There's kind of three options here. The first one is the one that we recommend doing before you take the certified test. This is the practice test. This includes one of every type of question that's going to be on the test, so you can be familiar with how to answer the questions. It takes about 15 minutes. You can take it as many times as you want, but just understand that it's going to be, your estimated range is going to be less accurate than the certified test because it's fewer questions. Also, that if you take it enough times, you'll start to see repeated questions, where with the certified test, our test item pool is tens of thousands of questions, and so you'll never see the questions that your friends have, or if you've taken the test before, you're not going to see any of the same questions. The next step is to purchase the test. That's the second plank in that screen we just saw. There's a few options to purchasing the test. If you have a major credit or debit card, you can do that. You can use PayPal. In China, we accept Alipay as well. If for some reason a university is paying or someone sponsoring your test, you might have a coupon There's an apply coupon button at the bottom there, which you can use, but that's less common. And then once you've purchased the test successfully, on the bottom, you'll see that the start test button turns orange. So that's when you can get started. And again, you just need your ID, your computer, and an hour in a quiet, well-lit room, and you should be good to go. Before we get into the test, we'll just talk about how the test is structured. There's a quick setup. That's about 5 minutes. This is an introduction, and we'll talk about the introduction in a moment. There's the adaptive test, which is the graded portion of the test. That's about 45 minutes. And then there's the video and writing sample. That's 10 minutes. That's the ungraded section. So we'll talk more about each of these. So first, with the quick setup, Sam touched on a few of these points already, but this will actually test your computer's browser to make sure it's compatible. And actually, the browser list does vary by country. So if you're in China, you can use QQ or 360, but in the US, Chrome or Opera are our recommendations there. Also, we'll test your speakers and microphone to make sure they're working. This is also where you'll upload the information about yourself like you would in a test center. You need to take pictures of yourself, pictures of your ID, enter in your personal information. And then this is where you also review all of the test rules. And again, this is important because if you don't follow one of the rules, you might have to take the entire test again. Or worse, you might not be able to take the test again for breaking the rules. So it's important to review those ahead of time and pay attention to the little things like make sure you're not wearing headphones and make sure you're looking at your test screen, because we want to be sure that you're not getting any help from anyone and that your test can be certified. Let's move on to the adaptive portion of the test. And this is a different style of test than other high stakes tests you may have taken. And Sam talked about this a little bit. And what this means is that the question difficulty quickly changes throughout the test experience. Also, there's not separate sections of the test. So TOEFL, for example, has reading, writing, speaking, and listening sections. They're all divided separately. The Duolingo English Test is all integrated. So you might be answering questions of different types, one after the other. This also ensures that every test session is completely different. So if you and a friend are taking the test at the same time, you're going to have different questions and different sequences. So unfortunately, you can't share what your exact question or sequence was because it's not going to apply to their test experience. Another thing to note is that there's no fixed length or fixed number of questions. So on average, the test experience takes an hour, but it may vary depending on the test taker. And that's because the test grading engine is very smart. It's going to keep asking you questions until it's received enough information to accurately estimate your English proficiency. So that's why the test length might vary. We'll also talk a little bit about the question format. So this is a test that doesn't necessarily look like other tests you may have taken before. The questions are short but predictive. They were chosen to be efficient, but also to accurately measure your English ability. So you might not have long reading and writing passages. On average, test questions themselves take about 1 to 2 minutes, with no question taking more than 5 minutes. So these are going to be short, which is good because you won't be fatigued by these long sections. Also, that these are unique question types. So these might be things you haven't practiced before, and we'll talk about some of these, but they're from all different English domains. So you might be asked about technology or history or science or current events. It could be from literally anywhere. So just be prepared to speak to different subjects. Again, this is an aptitude test. This is a proficiency test, but your familiarity with different English domains might make you more comfortable in answering the questions about them. And finally, everything is administered randomly. So you might have a listening question, a speaking question, a listening question, maybe 2 of the same question types in a row. It's all random, but it's all because the grading, the adaptive engine is collecting information about your proficiency, and that's the most efficient way to do it. And then just as a tip, don't stress. Like I said, the grading engine is very smart. If you get a challenging question, and I'm sure you will, even native English speakers will have challenging questions. It doesn't mean you're going to get a bad score. Just try to answer each question to the best of your ability in the few minutes that you have, and then move on to the next question and be prepared for a new type of question that might be coming your way. So what are these question types? I have a few of the screenshots here of what they look like, but they include filling in the blank of a missing word or part of a missing word in a passage, identifying real words. This is kind of a fun one, but also a challenging one, where you're given a list of words and you have to identify which ones are real and which ones aren't real English words. There's also the audio version of that, where you have to listen to real words and fake words. There's ones where you're describing an image in writing, describing an image aloud, you speak, writing a statement that you just heard, speaking a statement you just read, identifying an image that's shown to you, and then more general open response reading, or excuse me, speaking and writing questions. So these are some of the question types, and you will see these on the practice test. So this will help you get familiar. Also on our website, there's a video walkthrough that will go through the entire test experience from the onboarding to the question types. So you can watch that, and that's another way to get familiar with the test experience. Okay, so you've completed the graded portion of the test. Now you're moving on to the video and writing sample. So this is an ungraded portion, but it is shared with your score to the institutions that you're applying to. And the format is you'll be presented with a topic to choose, 2 topics to choose from. You have 30 seconds to decide between the 2 topics which one you want to speak about. You'll be speaking for up to 3 minutes, but at a minimum of 1 minute. And then once you complete that, you're given again 2 topics. You have 30 seconds to decide, and then you're going to write for up to 5 minutes. I'd recommend taking as long as you need, as much of that 30 seconds as you need to choose one of the topics, because that will help you start to form ideas about the things you want to speak and write about. And that will make the best use of your time and help you showcase yourself and your English proficiency to the universities that you're applying to. After you take this, within 2 days, if you follow the rules, you'll get your certified test results. I'll talk about what these results look like. So the Duolingo English test is scored on a scale out of 160 points in 5-point increments. Every test has a different scale, and to better understand that, we can compare the Duolingo English test scale with the TOEFL and the IELTS. The TOEFL is out of 120 points, the IELTS is out of 9 bands, and you can also see how these align with the CEFR, which is a proficiency framework. It's the Common European Framework of Reference, and that's often used in language proficiency to understand a test taker's level. If you want a more granular focus about how Duolingo English test results compare to the IELTS and the TOEFL, you can visit our website, englishtest.duolingo.com/scores, and you can see each Duolingo English test score point and how they compare. On average, most universities for, let's say, undergraduate programs will commonly be setting their Duolingo English test minimum thresholds between 95 and 125. So that's a common range you can expect. But of course, it does vary by program and by institution. You'll also get a certificate, and I'll talk about a few of the elements that you'll see on the certificate. So you'll get your overall score. You can see that big number on the top left there. To the right of the top left, or to the right of the overall score, you'll get a description of your ability level. You can check that out, and we'll talk about some of the things that you can do in English. Below that, you'll see the sub-scores. So we'll talk about sub-scores in a moment, but there's 4 sub-scores. With all these scales, you'll also see a score range. So each scale includes a point for your estimated score, but it also includes a wider band. And that's because every test carries kind of what's called a standard error of measurement, which is a technical term for the level of confidence we have that your ability lies between 2 score points. So on the Duolingo English test, we have a 95% confidence that your actual ability falls in plus or minus 1 score band. So that's a statistical property, but that's helps you understand that the range that you might be in. You can also print your results from here. You can send your results, but there's also a more direct way to send your results, and I'll show some screenshots of that in a moment. But that's what your certificate looks like. Let's talk a little bit about the subscores themselves. Most tests report subscores as reading, writing, speaking, and listening. But there's been a lot of research in language acquisition and language testing that says you use multiple skills at the same time. For example, as I present this, I'm reading and speaking. You on this webinar might be listening and reading at the same time. And so what we did in developing these subscores, we looked at ways that English skills were commonly integrated in academic settings like a university and throughout students' lives. And what we produced were subscores that were integrated. These are called integrated modalities, which is a fancy word for saying integrated skills. And so the subscores that we report are literacy, comprehension, conversation, and production. And so universities might publish minimum thresholds for these subscores, but they also might look at them internally after they receive your results. For example, schools want to make sure that students can talk to their instructors and their peers, and effective conversation requires both listening and speaking, so they might be looking closely at a conversation subscore. That's just an example, but you can learn more about that on our scores page, englishtest.duolingo.com/scores. So you get the email that says your results are in, and now you can send them to an unlimited number of schools. You can go to your English Test account and click Send Results. From here, you can search from the thousands of Duolingo English Test accepting institutions. You can search by name or location. Algoma is listed here. Make sure you pay attention to what program type it is, because there are undergraduate programs or graduate or other ones at a university, and you want to make sure you're just sending it to the correct program. You can select as many as you want. Later, if you remember, if you apply to a new school or you remember a school you want to send your results to, you can go back in and add more schools. That's no problem. You press next, and then that's it. The institution will instantly get your results. Okay, that was a lot of talking from me, but let me pass it back over to Sam to talk about some FAQs about the Duolingo English Test.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff, for explaining all of that. It's important stuff, and I know everybody enjoyed it. Test experience questions. We've got some great questions here. Is it better to skip a question if you are unsure? This idea comes from other tests where you get penalized if you get the question wrong. No, on the Duolingo English Test, you should answer each question to the best of your ability because of that computer adaptive nature. We're gonna do our best to ascertain where you are and what portion of that you got correct. Answer everything. How should you pace the test? How long is each section? Jeff mentioned this, partly to avoid fatigue, but also because we don't need as much time for some of that as well. All of the questions are integrated. And that's how we come up with those integrated modalities, or those skills of literacy and production, conversation and comprehension. And all of them are within each section, and there is a timer for each question. So you want to make sure that you answer the question and you really read through it a second time if you have time, or listen to it again if you have time. If you run out of time and you don't click next, it will just go on to the next question anyway and grade it right away. Can I go back and review my answers? No, just like in a real test on paper, you can't go back onto the physical test. This is a test you also can't go back and check that out, but we stop you from doing it that way. It is an adaptive test. Once you click next, that score is being graded and you're moving on. So you can't do that. The next one is, can I take notes to prepare my answers? You cannot have notes or a pen paper or pencil or phone with you. So there's no notes that you can access coming in to take the test, but we do encourage you to continue to practice your English as much as possible, no matter where you are. If you get a question wrong at the beginning, it will not lower your score unless you continually get those questions wrong. And then yes, your score will be lower, but it will be accurate to the level of English that you are able to convey and understand. The difficulty of the questions will continue to change and to grow if you get more questions right. And so even if you get some questions wrong at the beginning, you can still get a score that will be admissible to any institution in the world. Will I receive a lower score if you have an accent? No. Our scoring and our grading accounts for all types of accents, but we do encourage you to speak normally, clearly, to speak with great articulation, and we'll pick up that accent, and it will not be effective. It will not affect your grade. Some additional questions. How often can I take the Duolingo English test? You can take the test and receive certified results 2 times in every 30-day period. Even with being able to take the test 2 times a month, our item type bank is so large that you will likely not see even a repeated question. So this goes back to Jeff's point of not seeing too many item types repeated. But if you complete the test, oh yeah, Jeff.
I'm gonna say, I think the statistic is it'll take about 1,000 tests before you'd see a repeated question based on the size of our test item pool. So I don't think anyone has about 40 years to take the test, but that's some of the statistics that we run on the test.
Yeah, you shouldn't need to take the test that many times either.
No.
If you complete the test and your results are not certified, it does not count against you. But you can take the test 2 times every 30 days. And then once you get your results, universities usually accept the results for up to 2 years. And so we say a validity of 2 years. There's a really important point on that I like to make as a counselor who I work with students. A 15-year-old student who takes the Duolingo English test is going to have that video and written sample sent to an institution at age 15. Totally understandable. If they're applying for a boarding school, that's appropriate because that's who they are at that moment. Likely when they apply to a university in Canada the next 2 years later for undergraduate to get their bachelor's degree, they probably don't want to use the 15-year-old version of themselves because the 17-year-old version of themselves is a little bit better. And so for another $49 US, you take the test again. 2 more questions. How can I pay for the Duolingo English test? And Jeff gave a slide with all the major credit cards there, and PayPal and Alipay are also accepted. And if you have any questions, you can talk to your counselor and reach out to us. What if I experience a technical difficulty while taking the test? If you experience a technical difficulty while taking the test, we are not able to grade and score and receive your full test. If that happens, you will not be able to finish that test. And in most cases, you will be able to take the test again for free. And you will be instructed by an email with what you should do next to make sure you can get that next free test. This does happen sometimes. And well, oftentimes it's based off of where you're taking the test. For instance, in China, some school counselors or some institutions want the student to be in a school to take the test. There's looping internet, and sometimes that internet in a school setting cuts off for 15 seconds intentionally in a school setting to control what's happening in different places. So this isn't just in China, this is other places. When you're in an institution setting, it's a looping, it's a security mechanism. If that happens, you will experience a technical difficulty. So we do encourage you to take the test, ideally at home, in a room. Sorry, Jeff. Is the test accepted for student visas? Yes, generally. The test is accepted if a part of the university's admissions requirement requires an English language test. And once they've accepted you and issued you what you need to go for your student visa, they've accepted you based on the Duolingo English test. There are certain approaches to the visa process in different countries that require specific other tests, but generally for every institution, if the institution accepts the Duolingo English test, a student can get a visa. And what should I do if I have questions or need support? It is a new experience testing from home for sure. You can reach out to your counselor, your recruit, your ApplyBoard representative. You can continue to do that, but you can read our frequently asked questions. But really important is there is a big orange button at the bottom right of our English test website, and it says help. And if you click that, it's a live chat. And if our live chat is unavailable at that moment, you'll be instructed to email englishtest-support@duolingo.com. And you can do that from the beginning as well. If you just want to send an email with your question, you can go ahead and reach out that way. I think that's.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the help button is probably the fastest way. If you don't, well, the fastest way is probably to see if this question's been asked before, and it'll be in our frequently asked questions. But live chatting with support via help is probably a faster method than emailing. So those are some of the channels available to you. But yeah, that's all of the FAQs, and that's a lot of content that we got through. So I think at this point we can see if anyone in the audience has any questions.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great questions coming through, and I just want to say thank you, Jeff and Sam, for that presentation. It was super informative. I learned quite a lot about the Duolingo English test myself as well. So we're going to go through a couple of questions today, and I just want to highlight for everybody in the audience, in terms of visa requirements, always best to check with that country's immigration website. So for Canada, check the immigration website. Please double check. We are not immigration consultants, so we don't know best. You're going to have to go to the country's website or speak with a registered immigration consultant about that. So we won't be touching on those questions too much today, but I do have a question here about technical difficulties. So what exactly is going to happen if, say, someone's internet cuts out or video cuts out during the speaking portion of the test? Will the test refresh, or will they have to take the entire thing again?
So yeah, I can try to answer that. I think depending on the level of internet loss you experience, in most cases, if you lose internet for a sustained period of time, your test won't be scored. And for security reasons, you'll have to start the test from the beginning. But you won't have to pay. Within 90 days, when you're ready, you can take the test again. But we know that internet varies in all parts of the world, so that is a reality of an online test. But yeah, you will be able to take it again, and you won't have to pay.
Great, great. So question here about having to retake the test. So can a student take the test multiple times, and will their highest score supersede lower scores, or will it show up as just multiple tests taken?
Yeah, I'll take that one. You can take the test 2 times every 30 days and you can get those results. You could take the test and have 12 results. And what will happen is when you go to your profile page, you'll be able to take the practice test, but you'll see all of the results that you have. And you'll be able to watch your own video that you're going to send for all of those 12 tests that you take. And then you would choose which ones you would like to send. You could send multiple tests to institutions, but you have a choice of which one you would like to send.
And there's
no super scoring, and so it's not like you can take the best of 2 tests and get the best overall results. And so that's important to know. But I would encourage every student who's taken the test multiple times with a similar score to go in there and look at those video interviews and see how they best want to showcase themselves to the institution.
And I'd recommend just sending 1 result. If you send 2 results, it's not going to replace the previous result. It's going to add clutter to the university's application system. So yeah, make sure you're happy with your results. If you're not happy, take it again. If not, send them, and then that will be your result as part of your application.
Great, awesome, good to know. So I think I know the answer to this question. I think it's also the advantage of the Duolingo English test is, can you take the test any time of day, or do you have to book a time slot?
And Katie, what is the answer to that question?
Hey, I was paying attention, so I think I know. You can take it anytime, which is the advantage right there.
On demand.
I would say that that is a huge advantage in working with students. Some students actually want to take tests really early in the morning, and so the traditional tests have worked for them, and they can still do that. But a lot of students want to take the test at like midnight, when their family's asleep and they know no one's going to disturb them, and they're still wide awake and they're excited to take the test. So yeah, you can take the test at whatever time is best for you.
Yeah, and that's again definitely an advantage. So switching gears here to some of the technical requirements for taking the test. So someone has asked about what if something like Grammarly is installed in their browser? Would they have to disable that while taking the test?
Yeah, good question. So the onboarding section should identify some of the plugins running on your browser. If it doesn't, there's a chance that it would be detected after the test section, and you might have to take the test again. So it is definitely best practice to disable any of the plugins that would involve your webcam, your microphone, or your keyboard inputs, so that your test results can be certified. And Grammarly's a common one, and so we definitely recommend disabling that.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of prep for the test, I know you guys have the practice test, so I will reiterate that for our audience that there is a practice test that you can go and take, but are there any other materials available either on your website or the internet at large that can help someone prepare for the test?
Good question. Sam, do you want to answer that?
Sure, I'll answer it, and Jeff, you'll be able to add on some of the other things out there on the internet. My best recommendation is to just continue to practice English, because it's a computer adaptive test. As you practice English, speaking, writing, reading, and listening skills on your own, you'll be able to find a way to best communicate your English ability. There is no Duolingo English Test sponsored test prep. And part of the reason is going back to the mission of Duolingo is we're trying to make sure that education is equitable for all. But additionally, as you're just trying to learn English, there are some things that I would recommend. I would recommend reading a children's book out loud to your niece or nephew or your brother or sister, because what happens there is you're actually building a great relationship, which is good for humanity, and you're building your English skills. While you do that, record yourself and watch yourself read a children's book, because what happens then is you're going to be able to see, are you communicating clearly? Are you speaking with the right tone and intonation that can convey a story? But it also helps you understand how English works that way. And if you want, do something very similar and send it to a teacher or a professor or a recruiter that you really trust, their English and their ability to communicate back with you. So that's one of my favorite ways to prep for the test. And it's not really designed to prep for the test. It's just designed to practice your English and be a good person, really.
Yeah, that's probably not the answer everybody wants to hear, but improving your English is the best way. And so the level of immersion you can have in English content, whether you're speaking, writing, reading, or listening. Another thing I'll say is you don't need test prep. The test is really smart, and it can accurately measure your English level. So once you're familiar with the types of questions that are on the test, you're ready to take the test. Don't overthink it. Don't stress. If you don't like your results, you can take it whenever you're ready. So I'd recommend people just trying it, and then you'll feel more confident, more comfortable with your results, and you can then share those with the schools that you want to.
Yeah, something again I found really interesting about the test is the adaptive feature. And so, you're not taking your score right down just by getting a single question wrong. The test will adapt, and you can essentially bring that score back up. I don't know if you guys had the graph there that was showing what that looks like, and that's that's, I think, just in my opinion, a better way to be taking tests.
A lot of test prep is, here's a sheet from a previous test, memorize it, memorize it, memorize it, know that this is the way it's going to happen, and memorize that. Well, the practice test gives you that saying, this is how the test is going to happen. But you could memorize, as we've talked about, 1,000 different things that are mentioned on the Duolingo English test. And those questions may not even come up on your test because we have such a vast array. So you're really spending your time memorizing English rather than practicing English, which is why it maximizes your time that way. But the computer adaptive aspect makes the test show your English ability, and it is really smart. So I would encourage you for the $49 US to just take the test once you're comfortable and in a good setting.
And that's not to say all test prep is useless. Like if you're taking a test prep course for another English test, like the other big portion of test prep is learning English. It'll be like, that's the other huge component besides understanding the test format, is just practicing the skills that will be assessed on the test. And because this assesses those same skills, any way that you can learn and improve your English will help you. I do want to point out one thing. There are points in the test where you will get seemingly easier or more difficult questions like out of nowhere. That's not because you've jumped up huge levels. It's all part of the grading engine. And if you get a really easy question in the middle of your test, don't stress that you're going to get a low score. It'll all even out in the end. But that's some of the kind of unique aspects of the test.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of how smart the test is and the integration of kind of these adaptive questions, someone has asked about how the test is scored. Is it checked manually? Which I think this is one of my questions when we first met, but is it checked manually or is it all via computer?
Yeah, so this is all machine graded, but we do use humans to make sure that you're following the test rules. That's part of the proctoring process, but we've found that we can reliably train essentially algorithms to grade human English or writing or speaking in the same way that a human rater would. And so we use all sorts of data to train these algorithms, and then we can really reliably estimate the ability. And some of the research we've done on the test is demonstrating that, for example, we can score an essay as consistently and accurately as a human rater would, using all these pretty advanced technologies in artificial intelligence and machine learning and natural language processing. So it is all graded by machine, but yeah, humans are part of the certification process.
For sure. And another one about grading, I mean, just kind of how the speaking portion is graded. So if someone is asked to, the question is, if someone is asked to speak for 1 minute and they speak for less than that, are they going to lose marks for not filling that whole time slot?
So I do think it benefits the students to make the most of the time that they have this is of course during the graded portion of the test. So if you do have the opportunity to produce more English, either written or spoken, it could positively benefit your grade, but it really depends on the quality of English that you're using. So it's not just about the amount, it's really about your proficiency and how well you're producing the English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, on that note, someone has asked about, for the speaking portion, is it okay to take a pause and think before speaking? And I think that that's kind of addressed in the test's intent to measure real English capability. So I guess you guys can probably address this a little bit better, but yeah, the question is, can you pause, think, and then speak?
You certainly can, but I think it depends on the question format itself. Some of the questions give you a moment to process the information before you hit the record button or before you advance. with the test, so feel free to take all the time needed there. But I think the more naturally you can produce the language, the better. So probably extended pauses might be a sign that your proficiency is lower, and that might affect your grading in a way that is commensurate with your ability. So.
Yeah. And just a couple last questions here before we wrap up. Someone's asking if they're able to appeal or challenge the score that they receive at the end of a test.
Yeah, when a student receives their email that says that their test was not certified for whatever reason, the test was not certified, there is an opportunity to appeal at that moment. And so if a student feels like the proctoring was an error, then they can appeal that process and they'll receive a response within the week.
But they can't appeal their grade. Since their grade is done by machine, that is their score. And if it were to be rescored, they'd get the same score. So in those situations, I'd recommend you just try the test again. But if your account was blocked because you broke a rule, that's when you have the opportunity to appeal.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, and all those instructions will come via email. So if your results aren't certified, just read the email. That'll give you details about the options that you have, whether retaking or not, or appealing. Those are found via email. So just pay attention to that after you've taken the test.
Right. So one last question for you guys before we wrap up. And a few people have asked this, but I'd like to kind of get you guys to answer this. So what is the advantage of the Duolingo English test? Why take it?
Well, we probably can go on for another 30 minutes if you'd like. But there's a few key advantages that I'll hit on, and I'm sure Jeff will be able to add to this. One of the main advantages is that students that I've worked with and students around the world that I've read for universities as well, they stress about tests. They stress almost way more than they need to. A healthy amount of stress is important, right? To be able to be excited about doing something new, or a test is important. But over stressing a test is not very helpful to them or their educational pursuits. So one of the huge advantages is that you can take the test 4 times for the same price as one other test. And so that's a huge advantage, the cost of saving. So if you take the test and in 2 days you get your results, you couldn't even find another test center within those 2 days. But now you have certified English test results, which might tell you where you need to improve your English a little bit more. Or most likely it will tell you where your English is at and whether or not you're admissible to a university based off of English. And if you are admissible at that moment, you've saved $150, $200 on a test. You've saved a ton of money on not taking test prep. You've saved 3 hours by not taking a different test. And you've now got a score that you can use for the admissions process. So now you can go focus on your geography or your geometry or your community service, or spending time learning about other things in your educational sphere, so you can produce even more important aspects for a university. So for me, the biggest benefit is cost, time, and the opportunity to do more once you have an English score.
It's great. I don't think I have much to add there, but I do think that the fact that you aren't traveling to a test center, you aren't making an appointment in advance, you aren't taking the test on a time that's not chosen by you based on the availability of test seats, I think that reduces your stress. And so you can really try the test when you feel ready to take it. And so I think that's helps you be more comfortable and helps you show your English level at the best it can be. And I also just want to say that, like, universities accept a lot of different tests, and if you're deciding between 2 tests, you should decide what test works best for you. Universities are not going to judge you if you send an IELTS or Duolingo English test. if you feel more comfortable with the IELTS or TOEFL, take that, because that's probably how you'll show your English ability the best, if that's the one you want to take. But the Duolingo English Test is obviously a great option because of its convenience and affordability. And there's the added component that the university gets to see and hear you in a way that they don't get with other tests. You can kind of showcase yourself, your personality, who you are. You're kind of more than just a number. So that's another benefit as well.
Yeah, exactly. Again, the Duolingo English Test is one of many options, but from my perspective, at least, the advantage is, especially during COVID and with changing responses from institutions. So, for instance, a lot of Canadian institutions have chosen to go fully online for fall 2020, and in some cases January 2021. Being able to get admission to an institution while a school is fully online is a huge advantage, especially in light of, different visa requirements. Being able to start your education online is a really fantastic opportunity for students, and something students shouldn't sleep on at this point. I think it's a really, as much as it's an unprecedented time in history, it's also a really interesting time in history for international education. So I think students should really be taking advantage of tests like the Duolingo English Test right now. I just want to thank Jeff and Sam again for joining us today. This has been so informative. Again, for our audience, we will be sending you a recording of this presentation so you can go back and check through the information. You can also contact your ApplyBoard representative if you have any questions, or if you want to reach out to ApplyBoard just to inquire further. We do have an email you can do that at. It's info@applyboard.com. Sam, Jeff, any last words before we wrap up today?
I just want to say, thanks for having us, Katie, and ApplyBoard, and thanks everyone for tuning in to learn more about the Duolingo English Test.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, everyone, have a great day, stay healthy, and we will see you on our next webinar.